now closed and locked, and there is no possible chance for escape. Just kidding. That's just a little submarine humor, folks. I'm sure everything will be fine. Probably. Oh, hey, there's a baby on board. That's fun, right? Enjoy your ride, folks. Captain Nemo out!
Hey y'all, welcome back to Jimmy Spins a Yarn. In each episode, I will spin a yarn about something interesting that's happened in my life, along with a few lessons I've learned along the way. On our journey together, we'll laugh, we'll cry, and we'll horribly embarrass most of our surviving loved ones. Some of the names have been changed to protect the guilty. This is episode 1, 20,000 Leaks Under the Sea. Today's tale takes place in Orlando, Florida at the tail end of the 1970s. Walt Disney never lived to see his famous Florida project come to life, which was good for him because that meant he wasn't around for the following mishap. But before we get to our story, let's do a bit of backstory. My wife and I had 2 children. When you have a small child, the first thing you want to do, if you're able, is to take them to Disney World, even if they're only a wee toddler still wearing a diaper. We had been there before with our daughter, so when we had our son, 5 years later, we decided to go again. See, back when our daughter was a baby, they had what was called cloth diapers. Cloth diapers were a whole different scene than the stuff that is sold today. Back then, if you felt your baby's bottom and it was damp, it was time to change the diaper. If you felt your baby's bottom and it felt like there was a large golf ball inside, well, that was a different story. You go over to the toilet. If that golf ball was solid enough, you would just dump it in the toilet from the diaper, then simply flush it away and you're done. However, if it wasn't quite that solid, like more of a constant liquid, you'd put the entire diaper in the toilet and let it soak for a while. Later, you would come by, reach in the toilet, grab the diaper, and wring it out, and then put that in the diaper pail. In hindsight, we probably should have used gloves. Or was that just me? Yeah, I ain't making this up, y'all. Hopefully, if you're any kind of a gentleman or a lady, you washed your hands before you prepared supper. Remember the old video game, The Oregon Trail? One of the ways you could die in that game was by dysentery. If those settlers knew what we know about modern sanitation, they would have been much better off. Anyway, when our son came along a few years later, we now had what was called disposable diapers. Y'all, we thought we'd died and gone to heaven. When they first came out, they were still kind of like the old cloth diapers. They had these little sticky tabs that didn't hold worth a hoot and peeled open at the worst possible moments. So to be safe, you used a safety pin anyway, and just hope you didn't draw blood. Keep that in mind as we begin this week's story. While we were at Disney World with our son, we hit all the little kiddie rides. So far, so good. Diaper integrity, holding captain. But as we wanted to ride at least one big kid ride, and I knew just the one. It was called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Great little ride. You climbed on board a little submarine and sat along a bench to either side. You looked out these tiny portholes to look at the, quote, deep ocean. The sub would float past several underwater show scenes featuring state-of-the-art Disney animatronics. Of course, the feeling of being deep below the sea was an old-fashioned Disney illusion. But there are a few key points to this story you need to know. The viewing cabin was really underwater. There were about 40 people crammed into a tiny enclosed space. There was only one exit to the surface and it was sealed. The passengers that particular day had no idea the horror that was waiting for them.
Hey Charlene, take a gander at this here undersea adventure.
Why ain't that a sight, Bubba? That thing kinda looks like her cousin Cletus.
Oh, come on, sugar. Don't insult the majestic gooberfish like that.
I just calls him like I sees him.
Hey, you smell something?
Kinda reminds me of that time I went to Waffle House and...
What could possibly go wrong? If you're a parent, or a guy named Murphy, you already know what happened next. My son developed a rather severe case of the gurgle squirts. The big moment of the ride is supposed to be when the giant squid attacks the submarine. But that day's biggest terror was, well, most of it was dribbling down my leg. And a little bit was on the seat next to me. I'm still sorry about that, ma'am. Did I mention this was the one time my wife convinced me to wear shorts in public? It ran all the way down, people. On an unrelated note, that was probably the last time I ever wore white socks. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Even the state-of-the-art in diaper technology has its limits. It wasn't a pretty sight. The smell wasn't so great either. As you can imagine, a fun little cruise in what had suddenly become the world's largest floating septic tank was a rather unpleasant experience for everyone concerned. When the sub finally returned to the dock, that hatch couldn't open fast enough, y'all. People poured out of that thing like clowns out of a Shriner mobile. The evacuees laughed and hugged each other like they just got home from a war zone. Yours truly was not invited to the celebration. I snuck away with as much dignity as I was able, which is hard to do when your son's digestive rejects are running down your legs and into your sneakers. Oh, and did I mention I was standing in full view of the guests who were waiting in line? Want to take a picture? I suggested to the crowd. It'll last longer. Finally, I made it to a secluded alley across the street. Now, you might think this is a simple, ha, my son had diarrhea on a submarine kind of story. Nope, it gets better. Picture it. There we are, huddled together after our shared rites of passage as father and son. We were well on our way to recovering our dignity, staying out of sight for a while in case someone we knew recognized us. That's when the fanfare began. A nearby portal in the ground began to rise, revealing a stage featuring a group of, honest to goodness, cats. I mean, I assumed they were people dressed as cats, but this is Disney we're talking about. Never can tell with those people. You know, after the ordeal in the submarine, a kiddie rock concert was actually kind of fun. It gave me something to groove to as I cleaned my son's ass. There are many memories that I'll cherish forever. This is probably not one of them. In conclusion, if you've never been, Walt Disney World really is a magical place. But always remember, not all kinds of magic are good. And there are far worse things under the sea than giant squids. Thanks for listening. I'm Jimmy. Join me next time when I'll spin a brand new yarn.
This episode was written, produced, and edited by Topher Graves. Art direction by A.M. Fields. Your host was Jimmy Graves. This episode featured the additional voices of Topher Graves, A.M. Fields, with a special cameo by Fey the Cat. Like what you heard? Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Best of all, tell your friends, and their friends, their friends' friends, their mamas, their daddies, their cousins, their in-laws,